Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 50, Big 50 of the Club Lorcana podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jeremy Bertrioni. With me, as always, Zan Syed.
Hello.
And joining us is Nathan Tripp.
Hey, everybody.
And Nathan Tripp is joining us because he had the pleasure of coming to test with us for the World Championship, which we're just coming back from. Usually I like to start the podcast with a little bit of a snapshot of the metagame, but I think uniquely this week, people have a different question, which is, how was preparing for and playing in the World Championship?
It was great.
It was great. So let's just start talking about it. Let's start chronologically. So 2 weeks ago, I moved into your house.
It's true.
We work at the same company now, so we would work side by side during the workday, and then as soon as that was done, the laptops would get tossed aside, and we would start testing for worlds.
It's true.
So a lot of people that watch this podcast have never been part of, like, maybe you would say a testing team or like a pro card game endeavor like this. So why don't you kind of paint a picture of what that looks like? What were we doing for 2 weeks?
Well, there are two aspects of this tournament. There's the constructed side, and then there's the limited side, right? Limited meaning the sealed portion of the tournament. And so we needed more people for the sealed portion, so we kind of spread it out. We started before that 2 weeks, but what primarily Jeremy and I were doing, we're trying to determine which color combinations were optimal, and basically we needed to set up a bunch of different tests in order to help figure out what was the most optimal line.
So the format for Worlds was triple deck format. So we don't want to talk too much about much of that because it's sort of over now. There's not a lot of triple deck to be played anymore, but there might be some. So we'll just explain what it is. Basically, each competitor brings 3 decks. When they play a match against somebody, their opponent chooses to ban one of their decks. And then to win the match, they have to win a game with their other 2 decks that are not banned. Sort of the number one contender in triple deck was a mix of blue red, amber steel, and green purple. This is kind of the only combination that didn't have, like, you would say, like a fringe or alt deck choice, right? Because you end up in a weird spot. Like, if you want to play red purple, it actually becomes pretty hard to make a configuration where you're not, like, also playing something like blue yellow or blue green, because blue really pairs with red a lot. So the number one choice for everybody was blue, red, yellow, steel, green, purple.
And number 2 was the choice that I ended up going with, which was blue, red, yellow, green, and amethyst steel.
Blue, red, yellow, green, amethyst, steel, which is what ended up winning the tournament in the hands of DKP, the current world champion of Lorcana.
Congrats, DKP.
Congrats to DKP.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely went to most. You won the one in Australia. I mean, he definitely he practiced a lot, and it's great that he did great.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy that DKP won. He was my ex-teammate and fabulous player, and yeah, congrats to DKP.
So so sealed was on the docket. So we set up a bunch of different sealed, basically tournaments with our friends.
Yep.
We would call people, get them over to the house, or maybe meet them at a game store or whatever, and just play a little mini sealed tournament. A lot of players at Worlds tested sealed, like, on the computer.
Yeah.
Using AI and stuff. Why did you choose to go the tournament route?
Well, I mean, if you think about the way packs are printed, there's usually like a print run, and there's like kind of like a set amount of print, like, is it called print runs that they can do?
Yeah.
And so if you play with enough packs, you can start to kind of see, oh, these cards kind of show up in pairs or in this sequence in packs. And so I didn't want to just leave it to a computer algorithm that wouldn't be the same as what a pack, actually opening a pack, would be. So I bought a bunch of product, like 1 case of each one, and then I had product on top of that because I don't really open packs. So this was the most amount of packs I've ever opened, and it felt like it was worth it, right? And so yeah, so I'm glad that I opened the packs because a lot of people told us that they started to notice patterns, and so did we. What was some of the patterns that we noticed?
Oh man, it's just so hard to say. There was like one where it was like a couple blue cards next to each other with dump truck. Like if I saw the card dump truck, I knew like the next 2 cards would be blue or whatever. I don't think talking about what the printings are is that important, but what's more important to me was it was really important to like play out the games and with
yeah.
the people at different stages because it wasn't guaranteed that everyone who went into Worlds was going to have played a bunch of sealeds.
Yep.
So it was really interesting to me seeing like if it was somebody's first sealed, that deck tended to look a certain way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if it was somebody's like fifth sealed, then their deck started to look a really other kind of way. And so it was like, oh, now they're starting to value the green cards a lot more. Because I think when people first did it, a lot of the times they were purple, steel, red.
Yeah.
Because the red cards look really like sort of you have haste rush guys, you have removal spells, and it's really hard to get away from that. But after a while, you realize that these like green cards that give reckless, you actually usually have more removal in green.
Yep.
And so watching people come up with that idea was really, I think, and watching multiple people do it was, I think, a really good way to know that we were going in the right direction. So I also preferred the like human touch. I heard about people comparing like their deck lists to the lists that the AI would come up with out of a sealed pool. I'm just a little skeptical that the AI is like there, especially on a game of Lorcana.
I felt like the AI. I saw some of those things, and the AI was pretty off.
Right. So we just didn't want to get led down the wrong path. I think the way that we did it was definitely the most expensive way because you had to buy a case of each of those sets.
Yes.
So we're talking about
It was really expensive. You know, I wouldn't do this unless there was like a DLC or a Worlds on the line in order to practice. Yeah, I mean, it was a really great experience. I will say that the seal pools that I saw in Worlds, as opposed to the ones, basically the seal pool I had at Worlds ended up being more powerful than any seal pool I had in practice.
It
And
seemed very, very strong in comparison.
yeah, it was definitely stronger. But the weird part about it was, I don't think I was one of the top, even the top 5 decks.
yeah, everybody's deck seemed really decked out to the nines. Well, with the exception of the match they had on coverage of round 2.
Yeah.
Those were just like two kind of whatever decks doing whatever stuff. But when I would like, you know, look at some of the competitors in the hall, which we'll talk about a little later, I got to go to the hall. I was your +1.
Yep.
You know, I was like, holy cow, this is the best seal deck I've ever seen in this. And it wasn't even like I've just been building it wrong.
Yeah.
You have Genie into 5-drop that's really good into Maui the Shark, you know, like these types of things, like nightmare
Yeah,
cards.
that was the Luca. When I watched Luca play, I was like, oh, he's just playing red purple
Evasives.
from constructed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, his curve was crazy. He went Genie into Elsa, into Maui Shark, into 7-drop red purple Hades, draw 2 cards, put 2 damage on a character. I was like, oh my god, I've never.
Yeah, this doesn't happen in our testing.
So the pools being so powerful, it kind of changed up everybody's strategy, which was kind of scary because I had been preparing for like a bit slower, limited format, sealed format. But when everybody's deck is so powerful, it was way faster. So what you saw on camera was just like everybody turning everything sideways all the time because they knew that their card quality was so high that they could sacrifice anything.
Yeah.
And so that was very different from my testing. I don't like. I have no idea why the sealed pools. It like seal pools can have a lot of variance in them, but it felt like it was incredible. Like if I've opened like 50 sealed pools, that all the most powerful ones that I've ever seen were at this World's tournament. That was like really eye opening because the aggro strategy generally was getting punished in our testing.
Yep.
But we couldn't punish it because the card quality was so good. And a great example of that is my one loss in Sealed, which was against Frank Karsten, where he's down to 0 cards. He's at 16 lore, and I have 3 cards in hand, full board, and he top decks Genie into another card, which does not allow me to just turn everything sideways and just win that game.
And I bet you were on a real roller coaster too, because I'm sure when you saw your cards at the beginning of the day, right? It's early morning. You look at your sealed pool, you open it up or whatever. You had to be like, write the check right now. That's a 3-0, baby.
Well, I wasn't gonna say I was gonna get 3-0, but I felt like pretty confident that I was gonna go 2-1.
Which you ended up doing.
I ended up going 2-1, so I was happy about that. Yeah, which was awesome sealed experience. Yeah.
So we're not quite at the tournament yet. So a week later, so I've been at your house for a week.
Yep.
A week later, Nathan, you join us. And this is going to be interesting for people because I've sort of prepped at that level for card game tournaments before. But you're a little newer to the whole thing and the whole scene. So talk about your perspective. What happened when you basically came on board and joined the Zan Jeremy testing house?
Yeah, so we were testing some the week before I drive in and drive out, but then it was like, all right, this is boot camp week. Pack all my stuff. We're going from night till morning. So I come pack Sunday night, and then we're there Monday morning, and it honestly was morning till night. And it was like an endurance game almost. We did a variety of different things. We also had Aaron there. He flew in. Shout out. It was good hangs, good meeting Lorcana bro, and getting to spend more time with him. And he did a really good job of, we tried to make sure that things were as efficient as possible because we only had a certain number of days to get things done. So we did a few sealed pools, which were follow-ups to the previous sealed pools that we had done. I think at this point we had already reached a pretty good conclusion about strong colors, and that Amber and Sapphire generally were pretty quick putaways unless you had some really good dual links. But then really getting down to the matchup spreads and running through things, we wanted to be as data oriented as possible. And so we had our theoretical decks at the beginning of the week. That we had gotten to over the last period, but we wanted to send them through the gauntlet. And so one by one, we start going through matchups, start struggling in some matchups, doing well in other matchups. You start to put those away and be like, all right, how do we break these? Red-blue was very important. The mirror being something that we had to make sure that we could win. And then over our testing, and I think eventually reflected in Worlds, is you have the banning, and the banning leans towards you can just kill what kills your deck. So you're like, all right, we can be aggressive. And so in our mind, it's like, all right, you can take out steal. So then what if we just have a super aggressive deck that somebody can't answer? And thoughts like that kind of started to develop, and then we almost had our own little sub meta internally as we're figuring things out. And I'd be curious to know how other Worlds players iterated in a similar way, because what we end up seeing with a lot of the decks is it was almost an aggro format. It was red blue, a lot of red blue, and then aggro decks. What do you guys think?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. The constraints of triple deck are such that the thing that paired with blue the best was red. And if you could ban steal, then your aggro deck, your non-blue red deck, would win every time on the play, most of the time. And then your blue red had 2 bites at the apple to win a game, and you could usually do that because blue red is a pretty strong deck. So that was sort of the foundation of our strategy.
So let me back up a little bit. So the first thing we have to go through is how I got to that conclusion in the first place. So before you guys joined in, I got on a call with Lorcana bro, and basically I wrote down what I thought every single player was going to play. So I made a spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet, basically I predicted what every single player was going to play.
Mm-hmm.
After I did that, the way I did that was based off of what they qualified with.
So it makes sense. Is they're going to play what they're comfortable with.
Exactly. So now I'm like, okay, this is what I think every single person is going to play. These are all the decks that they've played before, and what I think that their most likely color combination is. And so once I did that for every single person, that made it easier for me to determine what would be a viable strategy, right? So coming into the situation, I was trying to make the most logical configurations of the decks as possible. And the way you want to do that is you have to, you don't want to just basically make your opponent's god. What you want to do is say, hey, each opponent is predictable, and they have predictable patterns. So you need to write all that stuff down. Once you have that in place, then you're like, okay, how do I respond to that? So there's 2 ways you can respond. You can take the control route, or you can take the aggro route, right? So what is this tournament that we're playing in. We are playing in a tournament that is essentially a best of one tournament.
Yeah.
And once you realize it's a best of one tournament, the other factor besides it deciding to play 2 aggro decks or 2 control decks is you want to be thinking about what is like the most consistent thing I can be doing. And so when you look at the different archetypes, you realize you just want to do the most consistent thing because I'm basically playing a best of one, right? Like let's say you're playing a best of 2 DLC. What happens in that situation is if you don't have a consistent strategy, you can't beat best of 2. You know what I mean? You could just lose to your own deck and just get 1-1s all the way through. So what we were trying to do was have a very consistent plan because we were just going to be playing a bunch of best of ones.
Can you explain to the viewer what you mean when you say it was a bunch of best of ones? Because I know exactly what you mean, but I could see somebody right now being like, best of one. It was a 2 out of 3.
It was 2 out of 3, but you're essentially leaning on a deck to perform in one game in order for you to be able to play another game with it.
Yeah, basically, a deck is only going to play against the matchup that it's playing against one time in a match. Because if you're playing your yellow-green deck and they're playing blue-red, no matter what happens, one of you is going to lose, one of you is going to win. The winning deck gets cycled out, and then a new match is happening. So you're actually in a match playing 2 or 3 best of one games in one match.
Yeah. So let's talk about the configuration that I was playing.
Great.
I ended up playing purple steel, yellow green, and blue red. If you think about those decks, those colors, you can see that each of those colors actually has 2 major archetypes, right? Yellow green has aggro, and which is Turner Dogs, and then it has a control, which is yellow green discard. Purple steel has Jafar, which is combo / control, and then has aggro, which is either brooms or like just purple steel aggro.
Purple Steel Aggro. It's been a deck for a long time.
Then blue red has items and has a more spell oriented version, which is DKP style.
Absolutely.
So those are the decks, right? And so how do I determine which one I want to play? So first thing you want to determine is whether aggro or control is going to be better. And you go with aggro because aggro has a consistency factor, which is that you're going to have a chance to win the game as long as you go 1 drop on 1, 2 drop on 2, 3 drop on 3, 4 drop on 4, or some combination of 1 and 3 or 2 and 2. And then blue red, you're looking at is items more consistent or DKP style more consistent? And DKP style is more consistent because it plays visions, it plays a whole bunch of actions that allow you to do the same thing over and over and over again, right? And so now you think about purple steel, even though Jafar Wheel has a higher upside,
Yeah.
it is less consistent than just playing a 1 drop on 1, 2 drop on 2, 3 drop on 3, docking your way to victory. And so, yeah, so a lot of those decisions were based off of that consistency factor. And once you realize that consistency factor is worth a lot, then you know that it's more likely that someone playing this configuration is most likely going to win, right? The other factor that you're thinking about is how important the die roll is. There was no configuration that could allow you to beat bad die rolls. That was the reality of the situation.
Right, because if they ban your steel deck and they're Turner Dogs on the play, it's just extremely hard to crawl out of it. We actually saw Mo Shamlin do it at Worlds, but nobody can say that he didn't just top deck the most egregiously possible. He drew the exact Sisu he needed and then did it again the next turn to make it a 1-turn clock. Otherwise, he would have lost. So it was really hard to beat die rolls this tournament.
Yes, and it being 7 rounds, and then players who are likely to make less mistakes, it magnified the die rolls.
Magnified the die roll. I want to zoom out real quick. We got Nathan's narrative of what happened, but Nathan, in terms of analysis, did you like it? Did you have fun?
I think it was great. It was not for the faint of heart. We were going from night till morning, all day. But I think I'm at the top of my game right now. Like in terms of like if I can see the matrix at any point in my life, it's like, oh well, I can see every single play that everybody's doing, and I'm like, oh, they need this card, this card, this card. I think having an intensive like that, I'd recommend it to everybody to do at least once. Like even just your pals, your buddies, you're prepping for an event, just take like the weekend before, do a long Saturday, long Sunday. It's really good for your brain in a similar sense. Like I used to really struggle at tournaments with endurance. This is on a whole nother level to a 9-round tournament when you're like, we played a lot more than 9 rounds of games, right? So I'd say overall is really good. I think I'm really big into data, and I think that the doing a data-driven way instead of just like going on vibes. We love penguins, but I think that it's important to be thoughtful about how you're testing because I think you can test poorly where you're just like smashing and throwing things against a wall, and you're like, okay, what did I learn? If you don't know the answer to that at the end, then I think that could be wasteful.
And then Zan, how happy were you with World's Prep? We're closing the chapter of World's Prep. So how happy?
I was super happy with the World's preparation. I would play the same deck list again. The thing I felt really bummed about was I felt like my decks didn't have a moment to shine.
Yeah.
And I finished 4-3, one short of making day 2. I really felt like I made really great decisions and put myself in the position to make day 2. It just didn't work out. And in a tournament like this, I think that's the best thing you can do. And I am going to try my best to create that opportunity again. And I just think it was such a wonderful experience. And thank you to both of you guys. Thank you to Lorcana, bro. And like I definitely don't think I could have reached the conclusions that I did without you guys. The testing process was really vigorous. I will say be wary of doing testing like this for a DLC because it can kind of go overboard because this was basically you're trying to learn 4 different things at the same time and trying to contain it. And a DLC, what tends to happen is if you're only testing one deck or like you're just trying to play in one tournament, you might go overboard and you might overdo your deck, right? So let's say we know that green steel is the best deck. You'll start playing some weird stuff in the deck because you think that you can still make some improvements. And that tends to happen when you try to go too hard in those situations. So the thing that you actually want to do is you want to play on a ladder so you have different opponents rather than us testing against each other, which if I could have tested against online opponents that weren't like that we weren't like mini metagaming against each other, it would have been the most optimal way to do it, but that doesn't exist, right? The only way we could have done it was in an in-house closed environment. So
great. So let's talk about we're closed the chapter on testing. Let's talk about getting and the world's experience, right? I mean, this was a closed tournament, so the public couldn't go. So I think that it would be interesting for them to hear about like what happened at Worlds. What was it like being at Worlds or whatever?
Oh, I mean, absolutely incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. Let's start with day 1.
When we got there?
Not day 1 of the tournament. Day 1 of Worlds, basically.
Yeah, we got there.
Media day.
Yeah, media day. So we got there, and then they had like a party.
We could call it a cocktail hour. I think that's what it's called a lot of the time. There was like a cocktail hour. Nathan, you didn't get to go to this one because it was just +1. So me and Zan walk in. All the world's people are schmoozing. We got each 3 drink tickets. One says cocktail, one says soft drink, one says beer, and the bar is empty. Nobody's turning them in because everyone's trying to sell them on the secondary market instantly.
I didn't even realize that, but I did get a message after I left the party and like, do you want to sell your cocktail one? And I'm like, mine became a mocktail, and I got my mocktail.
You got your mocktail? I kept all mine. I kept my cocktail one, which ended up being the big money one.
It's so wild that people want that stuff. But hey, if you want it, it's cool.
My thing is, it came on a piece of paper that says Disney Lorcana World Championship. If they wanted the players to actually go get drinks, they could have written on a Post-it note.
Don't make it valuable if you want us to keep it.
They made it a keepsake. Yeah, and so and Lorcana, everyone wants to know what's going on at Worlds. We got a speech by the
Ryan Miller.
illustrious Ryan Miller,
It was
and
beautiful.
Steve Warner
Yep.
was there too. They're kind of getting a Penn and Teller dynamic down a little bit, where one of them talks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just true.
Yeah, no, it is.
It was. I mean, it was a really. I mean, Ryan Miller always nails it, and Steve Warner is always great vibes.
And then that was pretty much over, and we went back to our hotel. They booked us up at the illustrious. I keep saying illustrious, I guess.
They gave us a swag bag.
They gave us a swag bag.
Swag bag and an important card.
They gave us a whole new world card.
How do you feel about the whole new world?
Should we tell the story? I guess
Yeah.
let's just be authentic on our podcast. So we are leaving, and we're kind of the first to leave because we want to get back to testing. We're still really focused, and a cocktail hour is a little bit not what we're trying to do right now. I mean, it was great to see everybody, and we were very polite, and we were grateful to Ravensburger, but we were trying to get out of there and get back to shuffling some cards
because we had received the deck list.
We had received.
Oh yeah, so everyone was worried about deck lists till like the last moment. I guess we didn't mention that. Like people were submitting deck lists until the submission
6 p.m.
time.
We submitted ours
Yeah,
the night before.
that was great.
So we're trying to get out of there, but obviously it was great, but we are trying to leave. So Zan's one of the first to leave. He gets tracked down by the community manager. I forget her name right now off the top of my head. Do you remember?
That's fine.
We were tracked down by the community manager. She's like, wait. I got to give you something. And we're like, okay. And she opens her jacket. She reaches in her jacket pocket, and she pulls out a stack of 28 A Whole New Worlds promo card, unprotected in the jacket pocket. And me and Zan basically go like, whoa, okay, thank you very much. We got our card. It was like a little warped because it was hanging out in the jacket. And we were like, all right, well, we'll see you later.
We got a test.
We got to go test. We got to forget all about that. Just Ravensburger in the future, I think maybe put those in a deck box.
Top loader, deck box.
There was a deck box in the swag bag, so I wish it was already just in there.
It could have already even been in there.
That would have been a good idea.
I think a lot of ideas are better than it was in somebody's jacket pocket that was at a cocktail hour. What if she had spilled a cocktail on her jacket?
Yeah, they were in penny sleeves.
Oh, okay, good. They
weren't unsleeved, which is important.
Well, I will say I think the best whole new world because I was the first.
We were the first to leave, so she handed you the promo, and you were like, "This one's kind of," and she was like, "Oh, well, just pick whichever one you want." And we got to like prospect through the list, the pile of 28. We got one of the ones in the middle that was
nice,
in the best condition or whatever. So yeah, you got the best whole new world promo.
I'm pretty happy about that, but all I heard was, what happened to my whole new world?
Oh yeah, I mean, watching her reach in her jacket pocket, I don't know if I'm ever gonna forget because. I mean, when you get a prize card from Ravensburger, you have to sign a piece of paper that says that it's valued at $10. So what do you mean, Zan? That's just $10.
$10.
$10 card.
It's a $10 card.
Just crumple it up.
We make our way back up to the hotel. We test a little bit, and was this the day before Media Day, or was this Media Day?
This was Media Day.
Okay. Yeah. So tomorrow the next day we wake up. I wake up in Zan's hotel room. I make sure he's awake. He is, because I guess he was excited, couldn't sleep. And we commenced with day one. So Zan, talk a little bit about your experience going in and getting the seal pools, and then I'll tell you what I got to see because plus ones weren't allowed in the same place as the players.
Yeah, we went to like a players lounge type area where they had breakfast. We had breakfast the day before as well, which was the media day, and the breakfast was phenomenal. Day one, they had the Mickey pancakes or waffles, Mickey waffles, eggs, fruit, fresh coffee, and people who couldn't have that stuff, they needed gluten-free or something, they brought them gluten-free. It was phenomenal. Second day, it was basically the same breakfast except for minus all the stuff I liked. Or most people liked. There was no Mickey waffles, there was no eggs, but still, I was like, I'm just gonna eat fruit anyways. I didn't want anything heavy.
Sure.
So I had fruit and yogurt. I just wanted to stay light because if you eat heavy carbs, you're gonna get the itis. You're gonna feel sleepy, and it could affect you in the decision making process of building the best sealed pool, right? And so we had breakfast, and that was like early in the morning, like 7:30 to like 8:30 or 8:45 or something. And then our seal pool stuff started at 9.
Great.
And so We went in, and that was really cool. All the judges were lined up, and they were all just clapping for all the world's players coming in. And there's just a table with a bunch of sealed pools, and you just pick one. It's in a box of like one of the sets with a gold sticker over it.
Oh, that's really cool.
So it was really cool. And I just looked at it, and I was just like, I'm just gonna pick the one that calls me. There's no logic here.
Did anybody like run to like go get it first, or was it like court?
Everybody was pretty taken aback, right? So everybody's walking. It was like a pretty. I didn't see a single.
A serene moment of. Like,
Oh yeah, because that was our first time in the hall as well, right? So, yeah, everybody was like, no one fought over their sealed pools. So I grabbed mine. I sit down, open up my sealed pool. Basically, it's in a Ziploc bag, and all the cards are already sorted by set, and they gave us deck list, and with everything marked that you pulled in your sealed pool. And then you end up getting an hour to do your sealed pool. Yeah, I finished building my sealed pool really quickly because when we were testing, we were doing 30-minute clocks. I finished building my sealed pool in about 20 minutes, but I reviewed it for every minute.
You used your whole time.
I used my whole time. I checked everything over and over and over again. And I would say if I could go back, I would change one card, and that was based off of information I learned about the tournament during the tournament, which was everybody's sealed pool is cracked. Everybody's playing an aggro version of their deck, and I should not be playing one of these cards that's great in a board stall, but bad in every other situation.
Right. Yeah, from my perspective, we got up, we sent you off, walked you to the hall or whatever, and then I walked back to the hotel room where Nathan and Aaron Rubin were chilling, and then it was time to go when first round started. We went, and it turns out that nobody was allowed in the hall with the players while they were playing, but the hall was inside of a convention center that is at the Yacht Club Resort at Disney World, and the viewing area for the plus ones was in a corridor that sort of linked different halls of that convention center. And it turns out that, and this actually came into play a couple times this weekend, this like saying, which was that like Ravensburger actually can't keep you from going to Disney World. So that hall was available to the public. And we know that because a whole wedding procession walked by us at one point. So me, Nathan, and Aaron got to be in that room in the guest viewing area watching basically the stream, which was really cool. So we found our little hangout spot for the day. We set up shop in that viewing area, which was a lot of fun because you could see the players come out of the hall and they would give their plus ones or their entourages like a thumbs up if they won, a thumbs down if they lost. Zan kept us guessing a couple times. You would just come out and be like, and like walk over, and we were like, what happened? And you'd be like, oh, I won. And we were like, well, when were you going to tell us? Like, we wanted to know as soon as we saw you.
Yeah, everybody was like watching that door, waiting for people to
waiting for their person to come out. So there was a fun little atmosphere in the room. And so that was World's Day 1. You ended up 4-3. Anything else you want to say about that? I mean, sometimes it's a card game. You put yourself in a good spot. You actually even had really similar deck lists to the person that won the whole thing, so you can't be mad about where your testing ended you.
No, I feel great about my testing. You can't win every tournament. I mean, I feel like I put myself in the best position. I really would, if I could redo it over again, I would probably do the same exact thing.
Great.
Right.
All right, and so now let's move on. Day 2. We went to Disney Springs.
Yeah, that was fun.
We went to Disney Springs. I scouted out Disney Springs beforehand. For those of you that don't know, it's like a outdoor shopping pavilion, but it's kind of like the king of all outdoor shopping pavilions. I feel like there's a ton of brands, a ton of good stores, and then you also have some like, Disney World specific stores like the Star Wars Trading Post and et cetera, et cetera. I earlier scouted it out, and I knew that there was going to be a Stance store there. Stance is a brand of clothes I really enjoy. I texted you and was like, I'm going to go broke here. And that day I spent $200 in the store getting new underwear and T-shirts.
That's the best. I will say, though, I told you while we were walking around, I was like, Disney's tricking us into still liking going to malls. Because it's basically like an outdoor mall. But it was great. It was awesome. We did some pin trading. Yeah, it was raining,
Oh,
Rained really hard.
Yeah, we got poured on, but I think we handled it all like troopers.
So we're at Disney Springs. You get a text, and I actually learned that Brian Courtrade, aka the Rat, was also at Disney Springs and got a text which said, "It's time for you to come back."
oh yeah.
Um,
This was Sunday.
It's a Sunday.
Yep.
So we go back, and we're there. We get to watch sort of everyone's allowed in the hall now
Oh yeah.
because it's just the camera matches being played, and we get to watch. I think we made it for Ed and DKP's match against each other, the finals.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when we walked in. Yep.
That's when we walked in. The finals finish up. Again, DKP's super happy to win. It felt great to watch him sort of just like he did the scream or whatever when he won.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
like, yeah. And I was like, that was pretty cool.
That was cool.
It was cool. I mean, it was cool. Ed also had an awesome run, and I think we like both of those guys, so it was just great. And then, yeah, what do you want to say from as a player's perspective? How was Sunday for you?
I mean, Sunday was cool. We had to come back to like for like they wanted all the players on the stage for like the closing ceremony or whatever. So I went on the stage and it was super cool, but it was like this really wide shot and I was kind of like all the way on the right side. So I was like, I'm not on camera.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically as they were closing it up, I was like I found out all the DLC stuff and I was like, what is all this DLC stuff we only have 3 next year? Because I'm like kind of thinking about, okay, I made it all the way to the mountaintop, but in this game there isn't like I don't get to like start from the middle of the mountain. I have to go back all the way down to the mountain and get qualified for continentals, get qualified for worlds again. And yeah, so all that information, I'm processing it. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go to the jacuzzi. I walk off camera. Apparently, as I was walking off camera, the camera turned to me and then went around and just kind of caught me in this moment of like dang it, I have to do this all over again in order to get a shot at the apple once more. And yeah, that kind of became a meme, which was very unexpected because I was like, I'm not on camera.
Right. You got filmed in a moment of, some would say, weakness, making a funny face, and inadvertently became the face of the new DLC announcements.
Yeah, which I feel great about. Like, I don't feel great about the DLC announcements. I feel great about being the face of it because I think I was just so disappointed. I really was.
So I guess now's a great time to segue into the announcements.
Yep.
And then afterwards, we'll talk about Monday a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because I think people would think it's neat.
Yep.
But the announcements are, we're going to have next year 3 DLCs in North America, 3 DLCs in Europe, and then some DLCs in other parts of the world. For example, there will be 2 in Brazil, 1 in Australia, and then I think 3 in Asia, 2 in China, and 1 in the Philippines. Or maybe it's China, Japan, Philippines.
I think it's all 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And this news hit kind of hard because last year we had 6 DLCs in North America, and they were pretty spread out. This year we have 3, and they're really close together. They're kind of centered around the Chicago O'Hare Airport, I would say. They're all about a 2-hour drive from that. And it's just kind of hard to take because it was already, there's a bunch of reasons. One, there's fewer chances, it feels like, to qualify domestically in the United States. And we're not just entitled Americans, right? The United States makes up a big part of their like market share, and we feel like there's a really big concentration of players here, as opposed to, say, for example, Australia, where there are a lot of players, but not really enough to compare to like even one state of the United States, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd sold out every event
Yeah.
comparatively to all the European events. And Australia even didn't cap out.
So the announcements are sort of met with a sinking feeling of the community of like, well, how can I invest so much into this game it feels like kind of leaving me behind a little bit. We also got an announcement today, literal today, that they're not raising the cap. So these are going to be 3 2,048 player tournaments. If it was hard to get a ticket last year, you can imagine that this year it's going to be even more difficult.
Yep.
So it was tough. It was a tough pill to swallow. The good news is that we got dates for all of them and we can like start planning. The other good news is that if you are trying to travel internationally, which I think that we are, the 3 of us,
Yep.
I know that I I talked to JDZ Quest on Monday, and he's definitely going to the Philippines. So I want to go to the Philippines.
Philippines.
If you're trying to go internationally, it might be a little easier. For example, the Philippines one might not sell out as fast as, for example, the American ones. And if I'm going to Australia, we already know that there's like spots for me there. And so I'm looking forward to a little bit of international travel in the next couple of years. But the DLC news was we kind of took a hit a little bit. And they kind of promised that like the announcements would start getting good, or at least they implied that. You know, we've had the Greg Tito, like, we're committed to communicating sort of like assurances. And so I think it was really hard for a lot of people in the community. It's like, we didn't hear anything for 6 months, right? They just released sets. Then we have Worlds where they're like, okay, we know that, but it's because we had sort of a staff issue and we're like really trying to get this thing propped up. So once the information starts coming, you guys are in good. And then it just felt like our first announcement's like, okay, didn't really talk about the online client that we all basically think we need. Didn't really talk about, third-party support, right? Throwing a bone to some of the other stores. I think that a really easy thing that Disney could do for almost free, and I've hashed this out a lot with like people like R&B and Lorcana Justice on the spaces, is that it could start supporting stores like SSG, Charlie's.
They announced support for stores.
Sure, but
we don't know what it is yet.
We don't know what it is yet. And an announcement of like, we're looking into it at this point doesn't have a lot of confidence for me, because they announced that they were going to announce all the DLCs at Worlds, and it was like, oh, you knew we weren't going to like that.
Yeah.
So not really a mixed bag. It was kind of like a blow. You know, good news is there are DLCs. And we're like, how many? They're like 16 DLCs.
Everybody was losing their mind after day one.
Everyone was like, wow, 16 DLCs. That's a lot of DLCs.
And then the next day, they were like, 3 in NA. And we're like, we couldn't even get into some of these.
We were like, and then 3 more in NA, right? And then it's that meme where Padme's looking at us and we're Anakin. And we're like, or no, they're Anakin. We're Padme. And we're like, 3 more in NA, right? Definitely.
At least 3 more. Do you think that I know we're looking at it from the like North American and European, but I'm curious on like the worldwide view, like, because it's obviously growing in Asia. So they chose, I guess, to say, all right, this year we're pulling back from the North American events, the European events, and we're going to spend more of our effort into like trying to get set up. Because I know they mentioned, like, they're going to be taking feedback and looking towards year 3. That's not going to make us feel better for year 2, obviously. Do you think that this could potentially, and, I like to look on the bright side, like set up better for the future because it's more worldwide?
I mean, I don't think that you should ever sacrifice your current market in order to help your future market. It needs to be both simultaneously.
So many people try to defend companies by looking at their motivations. And this is, and usually I'm really against doing that, because I think that my interests and a company's interests aren't always going to be the same. And that's like, fine. In this case, they were the same, right? Like, how can you be like, well, they're like just, they need to do whatever they can do to make money. And then when they do something like this, you're like, well, a company's got to take risks. This just seems like an unnecessary risk. If you know that you can have 12 slam dunk events that are going to sell out if they have 5,000 tickets in North America and Europe, I just don't understand why like that isn't something that the company would want to focus on, and why they're trying to build out these other markets at an expense, right? Because It's not like we got 6, Europe got 6, but now there's 3 in the Philippines, and now there's all these things, which is a little confusing to me, because they know they're going to sell out on these events. If they host the ones, I think that the company should take their sure thing, and we would have benefited from that. So that's like good. It seems odd to me that they would effectively take a huge risk here at the expense of tournaments that would have happened basically and been a success, and I would have bet my life on it.
Yeah. I mean, they also could have just honestly just pre-sold all of NA. They could have pre-sold, if they did 10 events here for 2,000 cap each. I am pretty positive if they're like, put in the right locations, that they all sell out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we have such a there's nationwide a community that really wants to play. We see in the community hosted events, which really held us through the spring, um, while we didn't have DLCs. That there is a lot of hunger and people are traveling for non-official events. So I think it would be very easy.
So the other way to think about this is also, if you think about all the other TCGs that came before this, a DLC is pretty much the most profitable TCG event of all time from the company perspective, because they don't have to do prize pools.
No, no, like cash.
Exactly. So they are pure profit, right? The thing that they're trying not to do is ruin the experience. And I think that building a, you know, judge team in house in NA and EU where this infrastructure exists is better when when they start like branching out to some of these other places, because one of the problems that Australia faced was they didn't have the judge staff infrastructure there, and there was a lot of cheating.
Yeah.
The other thing is that people are going to say it's not pure profit because you have to pay for the venues and those can get really expensive. But we know in the United States that they can also get kind of cheap. There's a convention center in Kannapolis, South Carolina that can fit 10,000 people in it. And you better believe that it's not as expensive as booking out,
They could have done all of them
LA.
at Disneylands and Disney Worlds, and
Nobody would have complained.
nobody would.
Everyone would have. We would have paid whatever. And then you're talking about they can sell apparel. Like if they need to make any cover of costs, the stuff's gonna sell out.
And Magic actually, Star City Games had this figured out for a little while because it was like, oh, you want a tournament every weekend? How do you guys feel about Columbus, Ohio? And the answer was great.
Everybody's going to Columbus.
The answer was great. So I'm not asking for a lot, right? I just don't understand why they would cut something that was so successful and they would cut it back.
I mean, we can speculate a little bit. They're no longer with PPG.
Yeah.
And PPG would have been the ones that had the connection / bookings to these convention centers. So now all of a sudden they have that on their plate, and these things get booked out 6 months. I mean, 2 years in advance, to be honest. And so that connection dying has probably created more setbacks than moving, like allowing them to do as many DLCs as possible. That's I guess that's the way that we can look at it, but it just still doesn't feel right.
Plano, Texas, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm talking about places that are out of the way. We would have gone there.
Okay, so the one thing we haven't discussed, and maybe more positive, towards the tournament structure has changed. Do we want to talk about that information at all?
We got best of 3.
Best of 3.
Woohoo! Ding dong, the witch is dead.
And everybody's guaranteed to be playing 2 days now.
The wicked witch.
How many rounds?
12.
So what does that mean I have to do to get the cuts top 32?
And it's 2048 players.
So when we looked at the math for that, you need to have 28 points. So that means that you need 9 wins and 1 draw.
X21.
Which is extremely difficult, but not impossible.
It's not impossible. It represents a really good, and we think about what a bread and butter finish would be. It's probably going to be X3. X4 is where you're going to end up if you're a really good player, but you just got unlucky in some spots. So a good player who gets lucky on a day, X21 is pretty fine, I think. It's like a possible record to achieve.
I mean, we can look at our Magic experience, right? I lost the most win and ends into Grand Prix, which is a DLC type event in history. And basically, I X3'd every one of those tournaments.
Yeah.
In this situation, I would have been X2 going into the last round, and I could have drawn, and so I would make it into top 32.
So about as hard as top 8ing a GP is top 32ing a DLC.
Yes.
Great. That makes sense to me.
But you don't get to top 8. You get to top 32.
Right, but it was as hard as top 8ing a Grand Prix.
Yeah.
How hard would we say it was to top 8
Open
open?
Open was 12-3. And so once I switched to that, I ended up having, if not the highest chance of top eighting, one of the highest of all time. And so that one win creates a much more reasonable chance. Like, let's say you prepared the best you could possibly do, you could reasonably say that you can top 32 any event once you get to the X3 situation. But as long as it's X2 or better, I feel like it's going to be really, really, really tough. And that's why it becomes more enticing to travel. Going to Australia, where, you know, it's likely to be below 1,000, closer to 500.
Ooh, X3 is looking real better.
X4 is looking
X3 is looking good in Australia.
That's a
which
lot more
means
margin
that
for
the
error.
person who wins Australia in the future got qualified through not the same test as the person who qualified through NA or EU. Yeah, so it's gonna be super interesting. And continentals honestly just became more important. Like, I think that LCQ qualifiers, LCQ all the way to Worlds qualifiers, is going to actually be one of the most reasonable ways to get qualified for Worlds.
Yeah, that's just winning 5 rounds in a row, which a lot of people already did that in DLCs. Just go 5-2-0s, boom, done.
And they're likely when you played the 5 rounds, was it best of 3?
Yeah, it was best of 3 because it was just knockout.
Everything is going to be best of 3 now.
Hooray!
Changes everything.
Ding dong.
I lost my first game in the LCQ, so if it would have been best of 2, I'm dead. Like, oh,
Best of 2 was like a fake format the whole time. We can just say it now. Now that it's gone, that was horrible. That was a failed experiment. It was emotionally brutal. It opened the door to a lot of things that should not be happening in tournaments, like players colluding to agree to play best of ones.
We're not gonna have to deal with any of that anymore.
No. It was really bad on a lot of levels. I guess I commend Ravensburger for like wanting to try things, but I think that should have been tested a little bit in house. And so we talked to the head of organized play for Altered in an airport this past season.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you were there.
Okay.
And he was like, how are you liking best of 2? And I was like, honestly, dude, you really got to play some best of 2 to know how bad it really is. And he looked at me and he was like, actually, I don't. Meaning he knew exactly how bad it was. He could see where all the problems were coming from. I think it was like kind of easy to figure out the problems if you've played a couple.
Okay, here's the hypothetical.
Great.
Would you take 6 DLCs and best of 2? Or would you take 3 DLCs, best of 3?
easy snap off 6, done.
No, I'll play 3. I'll play 3.
I think it's easy. Play best of 2, play 6.
I'll play 3. I
Think
really
about
hate it.
think about how many players qualified for day 2 like multiple times. More shots is always better.
A much more skill intensive match in best of 3 because I think the mulligan, when you know what your opponent's playing, it is really rewarding to skilled players. I think there are lots of times where I'm like, oh, I'm on Ember Steel, they're on green purple. These cards matter, these cards don't. My opponent might not be on the same like level as me, and they're just sort of vibes mulliganing, and that's a game I get to capitalize.
But there's no way that's more than having more chances. You know why? Because sometimes the meta and the format is not in a place for you to capitalize on it in the first place, right? Think about the Bucky meta. That was not a capitalize it meta, right? Obviously, it worked out for some players, like yourself. You end up making top 32, but to be honest, there were just moments where everybody was just flipping coins.
I dodged Bucky all day also.
That also helps.
That was, dude, I've had some incredible dodges in my Lorcana career where I'm like, I'm just going to try to not play yellow steel. And then I just dodge it all day. I'm like, woo, I'm doing it.
Yeah. So like basically the reason why you want more chances is so you can pivot into a spot where your deck is so good that you don't care about playing best of 2 or best of 3.
Yeah, I just think that our perspective, we're players that are so invested in the competitive side that you and me kind of got more DLCs, and we got easier to get into DLCs that are going to be easier to play, right? I think that the DLC we play in the Philippines is going to be...
I mean, I'm willing to travel. I'm willing to travel, so this is not gonna be a problem. Like I would rather have easier like, but I care about the community and I want to be with the community when I'm playing at these events, and that's the part that I'm missing out on. I will get to see and experience and meet different parts of the community, which is going to be great. But I really did enjoy going to these 6 DLCs and seeing some of the same faces that are trying to achieve the same dream that I am. And I think that less of those people are going to be able to do that when we have to go to Australia, right?
I loved it. I think it's a tragedy. I think the announcement is a little bit of a tragedy. But I think best of 3. I mean, you put me in the dichotomy where you're like, which of these two, which I think is a little silly, but I'm so happy about best.
No, I think that is a really valuable discussion. You know, what do you think, Nathan?
And I think that like, I was a fan of best of 2. And I think that it's
You're a
more.
moron.
And that's okay.
You're so dumb.
But like the best example I can give, I had an awful time in Seattle.
Yeah.
Because I went 108.
Oh man, I forgot.
So I'm like 104, 105 at this point. I sit down, and I'm obviously just so distraught because I'm out. I can't make day 2 at this point.
104 is still in. But
Yeah, so 105. I'm at 105. So I sit down across from my opponent, and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" Kind of like, I'm down. He's like, "Dude, I'm having a blast. Like, I didn't even think I was gonna like win any games today, and I haven't lost any games today."
Undefeated
Yeah.
champion of the world.
No
So,
losses
like-
on my record
Like,
at 105.
I think that speaks to like the larger community, right? Is like we are a subsect. So it is sad that we don't have more DLCs, but like I think Best of 2 was a good experiment. I think it was more approachable. It served that thing, but they did listen to the community. So that kudos to Ravensburger for being like, okay, we tried this, but we're gonna move to Best of 3. We obviously want more DLCs. But I do think we will get them in the future. I think season 2 is where like we just have to kind of like hunker down. But like we've got third-party events. I think that's like something that we can call out. Like what's something that just got announced that's a big deal.
CCS 50K Invitational with 25K qualifiers.
And this is like I think this speaks to the community more than anything. Is that we have stores and organizations that are willing to step up and support the community. And I really like talking to everybody, like support these stores, travel to these stores. East Coast, Atlanta, like we're fortunate and we're blessed that we're here. We have Southside and we have Charlie's who host big tournaments. And I think those are going to be really important while we have some of this dead season in between. Like it's basically once a quarter we have a DLC. And then we're going to fill in the blanks with these local stores. And so Ravensburger, you guys said that you guys want to support them. Give them some promos. Give them some invites. Give the winners of these like giant large scale events an invite to nationals. Or like, I don't know. I think that like Ravensburger could choose and they have the agency to lean into like, okay, they're getting a reaction. They really probably hoped for a better reaction. They're getting a negative reaction. They can lean into like other solutions.
I don't think they were hoping for a better reaction. I think they knew this was going to be a mixed bag. But anyway, yeah, I was thinking like, all right, well, what other games are there? And then Charlie came out and was like, you can qualify, you can get points on a leaderboard that we're gonna have, and I like, me and you were like, points on a leaderboard.
It's going to be incredible. I can't believe this is in our backyard. And honestly, what this is going to be is the fun to get us to wherever we want to go. He's getting his passport. You already have your passport.
I need to re-up my passport.
Okay, both of you guys need to re-up your passport so we can freaking travel the world. And
I want to go to the Philippines. I want to go to Italy. I want to hit Brazil up. I want to go to Australia. I've always wanted to go down under.
where else there's 2 in South America. What was the other one?
There's
I think
2
they're
in
both
Brazil.
Both in Brazil. I've
Oh.
never played in a card game in Brazil, so I'm excited.
Well, that's because they speak Portuguese there, and I speak Spanish, so I'm a little bit sad.
What percentage of the population do you think speaks Spanish as well?
Portuguese and Spanish are really similar, so probably most of the population can at least understand Spanish and speak a little bit.
Do you think it's like a Urdu Hindi situation?
It's pretty, yeah, it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I did not know that. That's cool.
It is like an Urdu Hindi situation because they were just kind of Spain and Portugal are like right next to each other,
Next to
right?
each
So
other,
they
yeah.
just kind of came over, and it sounds really similar. But anyway, so I'm like a little dimicky because like, dang, I was gonna get to use my Spanish, and they were both in South America, which I should be able to. I can talk to everybody there as long as they're not from Brazil.
Yeah.
They should have had one in Costa Rica.
All right.
All
Are we doing a Duolingo? Portuguese
No.
Duolingo.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Monday.
Yep.
They gave you and me, players in their plus ones, a Keys to the Kingdom tour where we got to go behind the scenes.
Okay, I want to be specific about this. We got a mini Keys to the Kingdom tour.
It's true. The full Keys to the Kingdom tour is 5 hours long. Ours was 2 hours long. So although we got to go behind the scenes in the utilidors, which is what they call the tunnels where cast members get ready for whatever they're about to do, we didn't get to go behind the scenes on some of the rides like Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean, which you do get to do in the full tour.
And I think you get fast passes, which I love.
That being said, it was nice to have sort of a VIP experience. You could tell that the tour is like a pretty expensive thing to do in Disney, and we got to see some really neat things like the end of a Magic Kingdom parade.
Yep.
So we got to see the employees throw all their costumes off when they hit the final moment of a parade. And just stuff like that. Zan, how did you like going to Disney World?
I like going to Disney World. I'm not sure how much I like the Keys of the Kingdom tour. I'm gonna talk about it from the perspective of world's competitors. Basically, I want to say I wanted to experience something with the other world's competitors, right? Like I wanted to spend time with them and do activities that we cherish forever. But in that instance, what it was we have a headpiece on and we're just walking together, listening to this tour, which is cool. But I think that I would have just rather gotten a fast pass and go on rides with everybody. I think that's way more bonding than doing that tour. Plus, the main reason why I got on that tour because I was supposed to get, if you do the full tour, you get a golden key pin. And I finished the tour and I was like, okay, can I have my golden key pin? Nope. That's only if you do the 5-hour one. So I was like, I did this whole tour and I don't even get the golden key pin. I was pulling my hair out. I was like, I would do 3 more hours for that pin. That's how dedicated I was to getting that pin, and I didn't.
So let me just say that on this trip, so I've always been into pin trading. I have some pins from when I was 7 years old, walking around Disney World or whatever, and I liked pins. This was a trip where everybody got into pin trading with me. So we had Nathan, Aaron, Zan, and they got into it. Y'all traded with the people. I guess talk to me a little bit about why pin trading.
I mean, I mainly did it for my friend.
Yeah.
I did
it was kind of exciting. It was fun, different, but then seeing you enjoying it and then kind of getting to participate. That's the Disney magic. That's the Disney adult magic.
I was also very excited. We had a lot of debating over whether or not we're Disney adults. I don't think we are.
But put in the comments whether you think if you play Lorcana that you're a Disney adult, because this is a hot debate. And my wife always says I am. I said I'm not, and then I did pin trading and no longer debating.
Yeah, I'm probably a Disney adult.
I think I'm not a Disney adult.
You're in denial.
I don't listen to the songs.
Yeah, you do.
All the time.
He has all of them memorized.
Yeah, because I was a kid and I remember, and also I remember.
And you're still a kid at heart.
Sure, that's true, but I don't think I'm a Disney adult. I think I don't wear Disney merch very often unless I'm at a DLC.
That's not true. I've seen you wear a Mickey Mouse shirt a lot in my life.
I said unless I'm at a DLC, and I think you're also confusing it with my Bugs Bunny shirt.
No,
because you don't know the difference between those two characters.
I do.
Because you're not a Disney adult.
No, but you are.
I feel like if I was who's your favorite Disney villain? There's a shot that you're I liked Elmer Fudd.
When have I ever said that?
I feel like that's inside your
Wabbit
range.
season.
Yeah, I feel like you might be oh, the Godzilla movies are really cool.
No, I've never said that.
You just don't know with it.
And everybody's seen me do the interview where I was like, Mulan's my favorite.
Yeah, but all right, I don't want to blow the lid off of that. We're coming up on time. Is there anything else you want to say on this podcast?
Yeah, thanks for supporting me through everything. Sorry I was not able to deliver at the World Championship, but thank you for the support. Appreciate you guys.
Well, always next year we're back at it. We're getting in the saddle. Upcoming events, we have the SSG Invitational on August 30th. We're all qualified. That should be a blast. I guess we're going to be testing for that. Nathan and I have coming up the Star Wars Galactic Championship at the end of July.
World Championship.
Yeah, if we win that, then that's going to be so bad for you.
All right, can I build one of y'all's decks?
You can absolutely build my deck and I'll play it and
'cause
I'll
I
win
have
the
the
whole
best
thing.
deck for the thing, but this guy won't play it.
I'm playing what I want to
So
play.
I want Nathan to get to the World Championship and Jeremy to barely get to the World Championship and him be like, I should have gone the Nathan route.
Lorcana,
The only time I played in an event in Star Wars, I played Zan's deck and I top 8'd.
and you were playing it badly. Lorcana,
That's the best part.
Lorcana's the one where like we're sweaty and we camp out for 2 weeks just like figuring out the best decks. Okay, I want Star Wars to be my game where I play good, but like I mean, I'm just not that stressed about it. I want to get the decks together. I want to play cards I like. Okay, I like the big
That's
ship.
exactly what Nathan is doing. That's his strat. I sweat over the cards, and he just plays it. And
I want to play cards I like. I like 9 mana ETB sack a guy, attack sack a guy. shit.
I'm not saying that you don't like that.
I think Annihilator's good,
Annihilator's pretty good.
and I'm not interested in playing a deck that doesn't play Annihilator.
I know Nathan and I just care about winning.
I am cutthroat. We learned that. I'm a Slytherin.
In Lorcana, I care about winning.
Boom.
In Lorcana, I care about winning. In Star Wars, I care about playing well and playing cards I like.
Yep.
No lightsabers, though. That's for casuals.
You know that he's not playing for fun if he doesn't have a lightsaber in his deck.
That's really how I feel.
You don't have a lightsaber.
No.
Nathan owns a lot of lightsabers.
I do.
He's also bringing
4. I'm about
Good
to
Lord.
cut up some younglings.
Yeah, you're a General That's not what...
No.
Anakin only... Hold on a minute. Anakin only had 1 lightsaber and he did that. General Grievous had 4. He never cut up younglings.
Well.
He's a good guy.
He's not a good guy. He was like a bad evil monster robot thing.
Empire did nothing wrong.
All right, so that was our episode. You can find me on X at MoxJeremy. We took a little break on the spaces while we were getting ready for Worlds and adjusting to a new job, but I think those are going to be back Mondays starting at 7, ending at 9. Dan, where can they find you?
You're already here.
And Nathan?
Nathan Tripp, 2 P's and an E on X.
Yep, and shout out to Douglas Auchely, our Belgian friend that we made. He was a Worlds competitor. He went 2-5. He got a bye in the last round, and the bye earned him a Rapunzel promo, so he got what was a $5,000 buy in the last round, and I've never seen that before in my freaking life playing card games.
And your man crush?
And shout out to Sailor, my man. That was it was fun hanging at Guardians of the Galaxy.
Thank you.
Bye.